Hello and welcome back to The Art of the Spiel, the podcast covering the 24th season of PatORG, The Art of the Steal. I am Sarah from season 22, and with me again today from season 21 is Steven. Steven, welcome in. How's it going?
Good, good. You can't keep me away. I like being here though, so it's fine.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming back again. And we also have another season 22 alum with us today in Will. Will, you have been eluding me for so long, but we finally got you on the podcast. How's it going, Will?
Great. I'm very excited to be here. Never recorded a podcast before, so hopefully it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
Will has a lot of great insight because he
I
handles the
do.
edgic for the seasons. And as we know, that's been going flawlessly so far. So
hmm
very excited to have Will's knowledge here today.
Yes.
So the last podcast with Stephen and Joe, we sort of left off not knowing how that first swap vote was going to go down. We have a minority on New Louvre in Hunter and Andy and Tom. And then we sort of see how the dynamics are happening and why this ultimately ends up the way that it does. So, Stephen, what are your thoughts about how this vote comes together?
It's unfortunate for the person that gets voted out because Hunter was completely on the bottom, had nothing really going for him pre-swap, and he kind of gets swapped into a decent situation where he can now present himself as a free agent. If any of the previous Guggenheim members want to target each other for whatever reason, he's available. So he was sitting pretty well. Then you have Tom and Andy who were working together prior to the swap, and Tom did a lot of work in getting to know people and talking to them and presenting him and Andy as a duo who would provide extra votes later on in the game. But ultimately, that is kind of what did Andy in. Andy was never really able to get a foot in anywhere. And being presented as someone's duo or someone's partner, especially in a game like Survivor, it's very dangerous. People immediately see that. And instead of seeing it for potentially the extra vote that it is, um, they see it as these two people, they just need to pull in a couple other people to flip things in their favor. Um, so that's kind of how I saw the situation. I'm curious to know how Will perceived everything, given how his edgic was highly favorable for Andy.
Yeah, like going into before the swap, obviously the Guggenheims I think were in a better position just because they had more numbers, but Andy was the kind of player where I felt like he had a lot of potential just because he had voted right every time. He was sort of able to flip back and forth given the situation, and he didn't really have as much attention on him compared to people like Brian or Hunter or Tom or like even Justin. Andy was sort of under the radar and like with everyone, but not like super tight. So before the swap, I was very high on Andy. But when I saw that like 5-3, I think it was a 5-3 Guggenheim Louvre. How do you say it? Louvre?
Louvre? Yeah, I don't know.
Louvre?
I
Louvre
ain't
split.
French.
I knew he was in a bad spot. And the thing, like Steven mentioned, is that being in a bad spot on your original tribe is actually like sort of good when you come to swap because on a swap, if you're in the like if your OG tribe has majority, you want to target the people that are like in the core of the other tribe because that's the way you get them to fracture more. So someone like Hunter, who is pretty clearly on the bottom of the OG Louvre, got put in a much better position because they could sell themselves as a free agent. And um, yeah, the other thing I would say is that Andy seemed to sort of have a strategy of like just lay low and like hope that, other people would have the target, whereas Tom's was much more forward and it was much more about creating bonds. And I guess we like saw that Tom's was more effective because ultimately he was the one who was able to survive until merge.
Yeah, that's such a tricky spot to be in like the minority there when you enter a swap. And Well, I don't think Andy had a bad strategy of trying to lay low and not make himself a target. I feel like Tom did the right thing for his game by making himself more social and, getting in with people earlier. But sort of painting them as a pair, as Steven said, is I think really the fatal flaw there that really like solidified that it should be Andy versus Hunter. Um, so really, really unfortunate, I think, turn of events for Andy, and sad to see him go out there.
Hmm.
Okay, so then we have sort of like an unprecedented thing here happen, kind of where someone goes out without a vote and we lose Chase. So that was really sad to see. Chase leaves the game for personal reasons, and nothing that can be helped there. But I feel like it does affect some people's games, especially some of the people he's not on a tribe with anymore. He had been working closely, especially with like Gabriel, Danny, and things like
Hmm.
that. So what did you guys think about the Chase exit and how it impacts things?
It was uh it was tough because I think Chase was in a very good spot in the game. Um, DeLuca had mentioned in her cons at one point that she was a little bit worried about Chase because early game he was throwing out everyone for potential votes at one point. But he worked himself in with a really, really solid alliance in Moya and Gabriel and Danny, who eventually roped in Katie. And Katie was willing to work with them to vote out Joey should they have gone to tribal council. And so Chase was, I think he was a dark horse for sure to win this game. And it hurts Gabriel, I think, the most as they were kind of like a 1-2 thing. And it hurts Danny because he doesn't really have anyone else left on his tribe that he trusts completely. We talked about it last episode how the new Louvre tribe has this weird kind of 2-2-2-2 split going on where
Hmm.
there's a lot of pairs that are kind of interconnected with each other. And Chase leaving hurts Danny in that he doesn't have anyone that he can fully trust, but I think it also helps him because kind of like Hunter, he's now a free agent. So um, it shifts the dynamic a lot. It's really interesting. It's unfortunate that he had to go, um, and it's important that wherever you're at in the game, if something happens and you need to take care of it, please, it's much more important than an online survivor game. So we commend Chase for that. Um, it's just going to be interesting to see how people respond moving forward with that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead, Will.
yeah, I was gonna say like I agree. I think obviously Chase's decision, like everyone, we all respect it, and prioritizing IRL is super important. So I'm glad he's doing that. I definitely agree with what Steven said in that it hurts Gabriel the most. Like Chase seemed like the kind of player where like if you get his loyalty, he's gonna be loyal to you for a very long time. Um, so I think like people who he was really tight with, like Gabriel and like even like Danny, Amoya, or Katie, they all are really hurt by that just because he's someone that I don't think would have flipped on them. Um, and then on the flip side, this really helps like DeLuca and Chris because Chase was sort of one of the I would say he was the main person who was like saying we need to break up that side of DeLuca, Joey, Chris, and Cody. So with Chase gone, I think it's a lot more plausible for any number of those four to slip through a little bit more. But that really does shake up the dynamics. Also because it means we merge a little bit earlier than expected.
Right, exactly. Um, Another thing that kind of I thought just is like fun this round, we have a unique auction item up here in
Mm-hmm.
the speech by Winston Churchill. And it's this item's gonna allow someone in the game to make an anonymous announcement in the canvas, which is like the public like tree mail for everyone to see. So Katie ends up winning this. She hasn't, I don't think, hasn't talked about her strategy with it yet, but I'm very curious to know what you guys might do with this kind of thing. It's such a unique reward kind of to have, and I don't know, it'd be fun to try to think of ways you could impact the game kind of deviously and anonymously with it. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, I mean, this item just seems super fun for me. I'm actually not sure that like Katie is the most interesting person to get this item. just because I feel like she's in a good spot, so she wouldn't necessarily use it to, really like she wouldn't be that invested in using it right now. But what I love about it is that there's so many things like when I'm playing, I'm like, I wish I could say this, but it's gonna have repercussions on me. So that item allows you to get rid of any of those repercussions, and you can like really make a big statement and just like see how it happens. So um the other thing I would say is that I feel like people are more likely to believe something if it comes from an anonymous source and is in a public forum like that, just because everyone sees it. So there's that sort of subconscious thing like in your head going, yeah, I see that in like a public important channel, so it's probably true. So like if I had the item, I think I would like have a lot of fun with it and just like, I don't know, make up some stories and stir up some chaos and just like figure out how to tank games while like, obviously you don't want people to know it was you, so you slip in a little bit about yourself, but in a way that doesn't hurt you too much.
Yeah, Katie was in such a good position on the original Goog tribe, and she's been playing very conservatively, like through for the entire game so far. Even like on during the swap, like Gabriel was trying to talk to her, like, okay, should we start thinking about breaking up some of these groups here? And she's like, no, let's wait till the merge. So I want to see like how long she plans to stick to these groups. Like to her, for her, I don't really see a benefit to turning on the people that she's loyal to right now. She's like in good with so many different people, so I
Mm-hmm.
understand why she wants to play that way, but I would love to see her shake things up a little, and this would be a really fun way to do it. I do have a quick question though for both of you since you're on production. When this is posted, is it posted like it comes from Patrick, the host, or is it posted like, is there going to be a disclaimer like this is an anonymous message from someone in the game?
It's gonna be an anonymous message from someone in the game. That would be funny if it was
Okay.
like from
Yeah.
that like important announcement or something like that, but
Interesting. Okay.
it's
Yeah.
not what it is.
Okay. Okay. All right. Steven, what are your thoughts about how this item could be used?
I, it's I'm happy for Katie that she won it, and she bid a lot of money on it too. There were a couple people that put a lot of money into this item for some reason. And she's not the most interesting person to get it. I think if Danny or
Oh yeah.
Talia or Nick or Chris, if any of them had gotten it, I think we would see. I think it would almost be used immediately. Um, but if I were to get that, you know, you I would throw in a whole bunch of truths out there, maybe target some people that like I'm saving for later, but just kind of get that out in the open now. And you need to write in a way that makes it sound like it's someone else. So if anyone in Spec Lounge could probably know Shay is typing because she mistypes often, right? And you can just tell by reading her messages that it's Shay. Like I'll get a notification on my phone and I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's Shay. So you want to like divert that attention from you. People, especially when you're talking to people a lot in the game, they can kind of pick up on your mannerisms, um, and the way that you talk to them through text. And so maybe I would run it through like a translator bot a couple times to like gargle the message a little bit and then post that, because then it gets rid of some of the grammar that maybe I'm accustomed to using and makes it a little more cryptic. I think that'd be fun.
Hmm.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It would be really fun to try to like disguise or try to frame someone else as being like the author of the message. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love this item, and I hope she finds a way to use it creatively sometime down the line. She does have plenty of time to use it as well.
Hmm.
So it's something that'll be alive for a little bit. Okay, and so then we have our next challenge come up, which I'm not gonna try to. Okay, I will try to pronounce it. Corridor. Is that how you say it?
Oh
Corridor.
yeah.
It's like
Okay, yeah,
Corridor.
corridor.
got it, got
Hmm.
it. Okay, it's
Hmm.
just spelled super bougie. Got it. And
Yeah.
basically this is just like the Justin Flex challenge from what I could tell. Like, what did you guys think of like it was a live challenge as well, so how this played out?
Yeah, like this challenge, okay, I've seen people like do it on TikTok, like the TikTok videos where like I've seen people play Corridor before, so that's where I knew it from. And it seemed like a fun one, just because it was like Pat came up with it. He was like, this could be interesting to run as a challenge, and then we saw it and we're like, okay. So we had the spreadsheet, and it's going to be a live challenge, and it's sort of like a battle of the brains, almost like a chess match. Um, and yeah, it was just watching it was such a fun experience, just because it was like slowly spelling out the doom for Louvre as we saw like Justin just box them further and further in. But I thought it was a really fun challenge.
I was able to test it with Joe prior to making it live, and it was a lot of fun. It's very difficult. It's a very heavy, like you need to plan out things very, very well. And I won, so no hate to Joe, but just got to put that out there. But it's interesting. Tom mentions in his confessionals how Justin's like some kind of chess guru or chess champion or something. And Justin even posted in his confessionals a link to the Cracking the Cryptic Discord server. Shout out to them.
Oh yeah.
I follow them on YouTube too, and they're a Sudoku and logic puzzle server. Lots of fun. And so this was a challenge perfectly tailor made for Justin. And it was just him and Danny, who were the only ones available at the time to participate, versus the entire Guggenheim tribe. And so I think that was part of the reason why they lost. Gabriel took the charge in placing the pieces and doing the movements, but with so many pilots or so many cooks in the kitchen, too many opinions can cloud your judgment. And I think that's what happened here. We had just Danny and Justin vibing. I don't even know if Danny did anything strategically other than just kind of cheer Justin on. But the other tribe just kind of, it felt like they were all trying to give their 2 cents, and Gabriel was just kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see the aftermath. I don't understand how this game works, but it was kind of like it seemed intense as it was going on. And Justin's really like emerging here as like a serious challenge beast. So I wonder how that'll impact things once we hit the merge as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so then we have like this discussion going on with the OG Googs deciding whether they're going to vote out Hunter or Tom here, and they kind of see the pros and cons of both. What did you guys see as like the pertinent points in this discussion, and do you think they made the right decision in choosing to vote out Hunter here?
My take is that the correct decision is different for each person, because for the people who have sort of built a partnership with Tom, to me that seemed like Gabriel and Amoya most of all. I feel like that's the correct decision to keep Tom. It's because he's someone who's like quote unquote on the other side that will keep looking out for you. He's someone like that's decent socially, so he could be a shield, and he's also someone that maybe you'll get to work with in the future. But for the other people who might not be as close with Tom, I'm not sure how close like Katie, Cody, and Joey were. I think Joey was like the least tight with Tom, but I feel like they almost prefer to keep Hunter there just because Tom, if you're taking a Tom into the merge, and Tom is someone who's very social, probably going to be like an important player, you probably, if you don't want him in the merge if he's not on your side, just because that's one person that's not looking out for you. So I feel like it's almost this tug of war of who gets to keep the person that's better for their game. And ultimately, Gabriel and Amoya won, and Joey sort of lost.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I do agree with that. It's probably more beneficial for them. And something interesting that I think it was Cody said in his cons at the time was like, okay, let's see who kind of takes the lead on this vote. Like he didn't feel super strongly
Mm-hmm.
initially one way or the other, but he kind of wanted to see who was going to step up and direct the vote. So Steven, do you think that was like the right approach from him? And if it's like a vote where you don't feel super strongly, is it better to give other people sort of the reins on that? Or is that giving them too much power?
I think Cody made the right call here, especially since leading up to the swap, he's been in this perceived power position with his Triple K alliance, with his alliance with Chris and DeLuca. And although it doesn't, I mean, they haven't been able to show that he's driving anything, um, but he very much could have driven a lot of the discussion pre swap. And so I think him taking a back seat and just being observant is very, very smart. You want to pay attention to the people who are advocating to keep or to get rid of someone and why. Um, Oftentimes it can be, oh well, because they'll be an easy number later, or they'll be, more inclined to work with us as well come merge. There's a number of factors, and I think Cody was very, very smart in taking a step back and letting someone else take the reins, and that kind of puts the target onto someone else. I think Gabriel has recovered nicely if there was ever a target on him because of this vote. Um, but it is interesting because they were targeting Tom very heavily at the start. Most of it was his social prowess, challenge abilities. He's proven himself to be pretty decent in challenges. And then an overall worry about what would happen should he reunite with anybody from the OG Louvre tribe. But then you get Cody brings up a good point about Hunter, how Hunter is, he presents himself as being kind of resigned to his fate. He understands he's on the bottom. He could easily be voted out. So, there's not much I can do. And Cody clocks this as it's almost like a defense mechanism where either you feel pity for them or you think maybe I could take them out later, but that later turned almost into never. That happened with Justin on our season, Will,
Yeah.
where he was also a challenge threat, unlike Hunter. I'm sorry,
Rip.
but Justin was easily brought up almost every single vote, and yet no one ever decided to pull the trigger, and he made final tribal council. And so Cody is very smart in clocking that early and deciding that now is the better time to get rid of him. And Tom already has a massive target. He will continue to grow that target come merge, and it'll be easier to take him out with more numbers at that point.
Yeah, and I do think that's probably pretty accurate given what we've seen of Tom's game so far. Um, I don't know how much further he can make it as like, someone who's sort of more out there in terms of like their social game and their strategy. But I'm excited that I'm really sad to see Hunter go. Hunter is someone I've been rooting for since preseason. They're so fun. I love like the heated Hunter arc. I loved like the villain
Yeah.
arc after Brian was voted out. That was so fun. All the like stuff that was said in cons between Tom and Hunter was super fun as well. So I'm really sad to see Hunter go. They're really fun to have in Spec Lounge though already. So
Yes.
yeah, we do head
That's where the real
into
party is.
yeah, exactly. So true. We head into the merge at 13 here, which Danny immediately says is gross. Um, but we are merged, so I don't think this is like the group anyone would have predicted would make the merge. Like, so I know we want to kind of break down everyone we have here and talk about like where they stand, what alliances they have, and maybe how much longevity they have in the game. So we can go down the list alphabetically here and start with Amoya. What do you guys think of Amoya's game so far, and what she's gonna have set up in the merge?
I feel like, okay, Amoya is interesting because I feel like her game has sort of slowly been on an incline. Like she's gradually gotten into a better and better position. Like she was sort of on OG Guggenheim, like at the beginning. She was like almost thrown out for that first vote. Like people were like, oh, she's less active because Mars was immune. And eventually it settled on CJ and then Mars after that. But she was kind of like, didn't have that many close allies. But as time has gone on, she was able to win a lot of immunity challenges and then have majority on New Louvre. So she's like sort of, and then the other thing is that I think people like her. Like she comes across as pretty straightforward. She's easy to talk to. You know where her head's at. So I don't think she's going to be in danger for a little while. And what I'm really curious to see is if she can step up that strategic gameplay, because I don't think she's really been tested yet in this game. So I want to see, like, is she going to make some moves? Is she going to, like, be able to rope in people and, like, take out big threats? I feel like she wasn't someone I had my eye on initially, but if her game, like, keeps increasing the way it has been, I think she could be, like, a dark horse to win. Like, I could see her getting rid of a lot of the really noticeable big threats and being, like, the last big, like, taking the credit, I guess, for those blindsides and for those vote outs at Final Tribal and winning. So I think like my question for her is she going to step it up? Is like, will she be able to turn this very solid but safe game into one that's more risky and meriting a win? So I'm excited for her.
Yeah, I think solid and safe are two really good words to describe her game so far. She's definitely done enough so far. She has allies, but she hasn't done so much that anyone at all would view her as being like sneaky or overly strategic or anything like that. So I think that's really good for her. Her threat level is pretty low coming into the merge here. A couple things I do worry about with her is that I think based on some of the other people's confessionals of her, she's seen more of like a follower, which isn't necessarily a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing for now, but she seems to follow people's leads when it comes to the vote. She seems a little bit easily influenced by when people give her like any reason as to why it should be this person voted out. She usually just like jumps on board. But like you said, Will, like she has potential, and I would love to see her step up strategically and make a compelling case to win. What do you think, Steven?
I agree. I think, and that's kind of something that you love to see in a person is their potential, where they're going to go. You don't want to plateau too early in this game and then kind of fizzle out to the end. So she's definitely one of the ones that has the most potential on the cast. I do worry that she might turn into a Ray from season 21 or similarly a Marcus. I loved Marcus, but Marcus played a very, very safe game and never took any risks. And so that didn't favor well with the jury when he made the end. So I I want to see more from her in her cons. I want to know more where her head's at. And I want to see her shift things. She's kind of comfortable. She's definitely in the middle. She's not in the bottom. Come merge, she's not at the top either. She's just right in the middle. But if Cody clocks that, kind of like how he did with Hunter, she could easily get the target shifted onto her for that same reason that Hunter went home. So she has her work cut out for her, but there's plenty of time for her to make some kind of move. So looking forward to what she can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Next up, we have one of Amoya's allies here who was reunited with her at the merge in Danny. And Danny also had a slower game to start, mostly because of Goog being immune for a lot of the pre-merge. He seemed to reconnect or connect really well with DeLuca in particular on the swap, but he still has this alliance going with Amoya and Gabriel as well. So I'm curious to see where that goes. So, Will, what do you think about Danny's game so far and sort of the potential he has to shake things up at the merge?
Yeah, Danny, I think like he's been very, very UTR so far, and I think a big part of that is just he has gone to tribal council twice, I think, voted out. Both were unanimous, I believe. So he hasn't really had to do much yet. Um, and he's played a quieter game. Like I don't see a lot of people talking about Danny in cons. Like he doesn't seem like as big a character, but I feel like he's in a solid spot right now. I don't really think anyone's looking his way. So I actually put him in a similar in terms of positioning. I think he's pretty similar to Amoya, like doing decent, probably not a target, but he's hopefully going to step up his game and convert it into something a little stronger if he wants to get to the end and win. Um, and then the other thing I'll say about Danny is that I've spectated him twice before actually, and both times he was playing very solid before the merge. You know, a lot of allies, like a lot of trust, idle finds even. And then like either early merge or mid merge, he just blew his game up. Like he gets into like an argument or something, or he like goes a little bit crazy. So I'm curious to see if he's learned from that and if he'll be able to like tone it down and not kind of lose his cool or like panic and like hit the crazy button. So I don't know. I think his game is also very open ended, and I want to see him make some moves. I feel like he's the kind of guy that he doesn't want a safe game. He'll shake things up if we have to. So I'm glad he's here.
He is, I agree totally. I think a lot of that chaotic energy that he had in those previous games came from finding those idols relatively early. And he struggled to find the idol here. He started the hunt kind of later than most other people on his tribes, and people have noticed that he started the hunt. The ones that know, at least, like Chris and I think DeLuca. Um, so I think that energy in creating opportunities is dimmed a little bit because he doesn't have that security of having an idol.
Mhm.
Should he find the merge idol? If there is a merge idol, maybe he'll start to play a little bit more aggressively. But it's kind of a nice change of pace, and I wonder if he feels the same way. Because you're right, he's in a good spot. He's playing very quiet. Not a lot of people are kind of clocking him. Some people do want to get him out for different reasons. Um, but I think his bond with DeLuca helped keep him in should they have gone to tribal council. So he's making the right moves, he's connecting with the right people. It's just a matter of striking at the right time. And I think in the past his timing has been off a little bit. So that's what I look forward to from Danny.
Yeah, and Danny even talked about in the preseason that he knows his biggest problem in the game is managing his threat level at the merge. And today, even in comms, he said, "I can feel myself becoming unhinged. I was doing so well at being under the radar in this game. What is it about the merge that flips my crazy switch?" So he knows. So I think, self-awareness is the first step here. So hopefully he's able to, remain calm. He has good allies. Like, he has very, like, reasonable allies. I think Gabriel in particular is like a good sounding board for him because they're both like logical and strategic and like intelligent. And so they can talk things through, which they have been a lot today in terms of like who else they want to align with. So I'm excited to see what happens with Danny's game. Um, Next up, we have DeLuca, our social queen, with an idol that she purchased for $20 in the pre-merge, which I was talking to Steven about this right beforehand. Like, didn't she say she was going to give the idol back to Chris at the merge? What do we think's happening with that?
I think he
Uh,
forgot.
yeah,
I
that's
think he
that's my take.
forgot. Hmm.
Uh, it's so interesting because the trade for $20 is weird. Like I like get like, oh, give your idol to someone like if you really trust them. I'm like, why would you ask for money? And why would it be $20? Like that's very random to me. Um, but yeah, looking more broadly at DeLuca, I guess, I think her not going to tribal that much has been very good for her, just because she's managed to, you know, just focus on bonds and not really have to stab anyone in the back. So she seems like the person that gets very, very close with people, kind of like you, Sarah, that gets very, very close with people. And her having to sever those will show like that she is capable of like cutting people, and that maybe others will realize maybe I'm not as close to her as I initially thought. Um, so right here, I actually think she's in an okay spot, just because even if Guggenheim does cannibalize, I don't think it's her that's going to be the first one taken out. I think it's more likely to be Chris. But um, I don't necessarily see a path to the end for her, just because she's sort of on everyone's lips right now. Like everyone's talking about her. She's a big focal point. She's a really big presence, and she's very likable and in a very like obvious way. Like she is very clearly someone that people gravitate towards. So I'm hope that she's able to sort of like stay in for a while and pull off some big moves. But I'm also a little nervous because her threat level has been like rising and rising, and like everyone's clocking it.
I hadn't thought about that comparison to Sarah, and that makes a lot of sense. Because Sarah, you put yourself in such a great position, but at the same time, a terrible position in your game, having multiple alliances of three and none of them overlapped. Um, so
Listen, I put myself in a
DeLuca,
good position. I just didn't use it correctly.
but and I mean, like I said, you were doing really, really well, and I think DeLuca is also doing similarly well. Um, like what Will said, she has a lot of ins with a lot of people. I'm curious to see if she plays the idol for Chris or if she panics and plays it for herself when she's not the target. Because I do think that she tends to get a little
Yeah.
bit in her head and get a little paranoid. and we love Paranoia and Survivor, but I have a feeling that she's not going to play it for Chris. She's not going to give it back to Chris, and she might burn the idol prematurely. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Sarah?
Yeah. I mean, I'm flattered by the comparison to DeLuca. I think she's like a total queen. Like nobody was offering to sell me an idol for $20. But like I I just enjoy DeLuca. She's like such a pleasure to watch because you can tell how invested she is. She seems like just super honest, especially with like her close allies. She's built like this very sweet bond with Chris in particular.
Mhm.
But like you guys said, the paranoia and like how difficult it was for her to like vote Mars out, like someone who was basically inactive at the beginning of the game. Like
Yeah.
she struggled with that vote. Like she didn't want to vote anyone out. She's sort of had a break from that now, but she's gonna have to start cutting people again, and I'm curious and I'm worried about how that's going to affect her emotionally and whether like becoming too emotional is going to impact her game in a negative way. So I think that's my biggest concern for her, honestly. Also, she was kind of set up to be blindsided had Guggenheim gone to another tribal council in that first iteration, because they had sort of swung Katie over to the counter alliance side. So one of her allies could have very well been blindsided there, and she doesn't know that because they never had to go to tribal council.
Mhm.
So that potential for that still to happen is really interesting to me, and I'm curious how she would handle it if anything like that does happen.
She's very much a Don Meehan. Kara Moen feels very much like that. She's making good emotional connections, but ultimately she's going to have to cut people. And from experience, it's not fun. I'll just leave it at that. So yeah, DeLuca's great. I think she's doing pretty well. Just have to see what happens with her.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure
Agreed.
she's going to be super enjoyable for however long she is in the game. I do kind of agree with Will that I think it's going to be tough for her to get to the end, but I think I'm going to enjoy watching her while she's still here. And then
Mhm.
next up we have Floyd, who's been a little bit AFK for a little bit now. He's got some personal stuff going on. But Floyd has been really interesting to watch. His social game has been super impressive in the pre-merge. I thought his relationship with Hunter in particular was really, really sweet. Like of all these duos we see forming, there was one I really enjoyed keeping track of as well. But I think Floyd is actually set up pretty well here too. He's under the radar. Nobody's really actively coming for him, and people seem to like him overall. What do you think of Floyd, Steven?
Floyd is, I think he is kind of like Chase. He's in that dark horse position, very in the middle, but in a good middle. Unlike Amoya and maybe Danny, he has set himself up where he has a lot of information coming his way. He's making the right connections. I believe he connected with Danny post swap, and he kind of furthered his connections with Justin. Um, and so and I think I had to double check, but I'm pretty sure he likes DeLuca as well. So he's in the middle, but he's in a good middle. I say that because he has all these different avenues of information coming to him, and no one is clocking it. No one is comparing notes and saying, um, "Are you talking to Floyd? Am I talking to Floyd? Like who's talking to Floyd?" kind of thing. So I think that he of the original Louvre members, if we're talking just social game, I think he's the best at the moment. There's only 5 of them left, so they really have to work overtime to stay. But I think of those 5, he's in the best spot right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I really like Floyd. I think he just comes across as super genuine and just people just really like him. And what I'll say is he's actually my top winner contender now. Like if you look at my Edgic, the new one will be posted soon, but he's at the top of my list, and that's just because he seems to be perfectly in that spot where everyone sort of likes him. No one's going to want to get rid of him anytime soon. But in his cons, he's demonstrated strategic aptitude. Even when he's left out of a vote, people feel really bad about it and like want to pull him back in afterwards. And he's also not seen of a threat compared to someone like DeLuca or maybe even Justin. He's very under the radar, but he's also forming the right bonds. And I think he has a great shot at sort of keep slipping by. If the Louvres get picked off, I don't think he's going to be one of them. Like, let's say it does sort of turn into a begonging and it becomes like, I don't know, like 8-3 or something like that. I think at that point, Guggenheim will cannibalize and Floyd can just keep going. He's smart, he's sensible, and I just really like his spot. I think people are going to want to work with him and he's going to be able to push himself forward. So, hoping he wins because that would mean I was right and I really like being right. But if not, I'm still confident that he's going to play a great game.
I totally agree that Floyd has like serious winner potential here, and that especially since we already know there are people on Guggenheim who are itching to turn on each other, and people like Gabriel, who's the next person we're going to talk about, who I also think has some winner potential, and I see from Will's Edgic that he agrees. So Gabriel is someone who's just been like fascinating to watch throughout. I think he's talked strategy, quite a bit, and always does so in a way that's like very logical, but it shows that he's always like thinking a few steps ahead, which I'm really enjoying. So he's reunited here with some of his allies. He's sort of in those conversations with Danny, talking about who they should work with going forward. I just adore Gabriel, and I think he's playing a good game so far. I don't think he's immediately being targeted either, but he's definitely a little bit more out there than some of the other players. I would say someone like a Moya potentially,
Mhm.
but I think he's playing really well so far. Do you agree, Will?
Yeah, I agree. I really like Gabriel. I think like at the beginning, I was like, okay, he's a big presence, but is he going to spiral out? And he didn't. He's been at the top of my power rankings for a very long time, just because everyone likes Gabriel, and he's just such a fun person to have around. Like he's very sweet, very nice. I mean, every time he's like swapped or met new people, immediately they're like, "I like Gabriel. I want to like work with Gabriel and see where that goes." Um, he's someone that like we've seen actually in PatORG for a while. He was pretty active in Spec Lounge during mine slash Steven's season. Um, and he wasn't like in the 22 and 23 Spec Lounges as much, but I recognized him when he applied, and I'm like, he knows what's going on. Hopefully, he's going to be good. And he's been really great. His confessionals are awesome. He's really fun, and he's playing a great game. I think the reason I have him below someone like Floyd or Katie, I'd say, in winner contenders is that I think he's not going to be able to manage his threat level as much just because he's so social. But for now, he's doing a really great job, and he's able to blend that strategic game with that excellent social game. So I think he's going to be a big player in these early merge rounds, and I'm excited to see him play.
100% agree. And he is probably the only Brazilian that I say that I like, because Argentines and Brazilians don't get along very famously. But he cheered for me in social media, so I got to cheer for him here. And rightfully so, I need to cheer for him because he's playing phenomenally. Despite going to tribal council twice, post swap, he kind of commanded those votes. He was very integral in keeping Tom, I think, both times. And so we see that his strategic mind is there. He's got that strategic mind, like Russell Hantz says, but he's got the social game to back it up. And that's what's important. I think a lot of people, when they play Survivor, they don't understand how important it is to have a good balance of both of those. You need the strategy to target, the big players or the ones that are skating by at the right time, but you need to have the social game so that when you do vote them out and they're on the jury, they won't feel as hurt. And we had just mentioned with DeLuca is going to have a hard time with jury management should she make the end. I don't think Gabriel will as much. I think he, despite making really good connections with a lot of people, I don't think many will feel as burned by him in a final tribal council situation as they would maybe DeLuca, or I think DeLuca only, really, because everyone else on the cast is kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
So where DeLuca is playing a great social game, but not a great strategic game, Gabriel is playing both extremely well, like commendable. I hope he doesn't flame out early. I hope he can keep this momentum going. And I hope he keeps the target off of him long enough to where he sets himself up well for the last couple runs to get into the finale. So great stuff from Gabe. Really, really, really looking forward to see more out of him. So that's what I got from him.
Yeah, I think we all agree that we want to see more from Gabriel here. So excited to see
Yeah.
where he goes with that. Next up, we have Joey. Will, what are your thoughts about Joey's game so far? What can they do here in the merge? Sort of give him a boost and potentially make a run for it at the end.
Yeah, Joey's super interesting because on my first power ranking, Joey was at the top. Um, he was like everyone like really liked Joey. He seemed like in the center of a bunch of alliances. And then like as time went on, I don't know if this was an activity thing or people just caught on, but Joey's spot was not great, and he very well could have been the boot on OG Guggenheim if they did go to tribal. So it was like a little bit iffy. And then luckily he got a good swap. He's very safe. We mentioned the Hunter vote off, which was interesting for me for sure because um, Joey wanted to keep Hunter, and I think it was better for him to keep Hunter, but I think he was right because you can't like fight it too much. Um, so I don't know about Joey. I feel like his activity level, he hasn't been able to be as active recently for personal reasons, which is totally understandable. But I think he's sort of getting back in the swing of things. And that middle pre-merge period, people were kind of saying, "I want Joey out. I don't trust Joey that much." But people are starting to like Joey more. I think he's pretty funny. I love his parchments. His parchments are amazing, and I don't know. I actually see potential for him to sort of make a comeback, and honestly, I could see him winning. Like he's one that I think like if he isn't voted off early on, I think he's going to make it far because if he can make it past like 13, 12, 11, and say like a couple of his allies like Cody and Chris go home, he'll be set up really well just because he's not really a threat anymore, but he still has the social and strategic game to keep plowing forward and potentially carve out a path to the end. So I think he's someone that I actually do see some winner potential in, which might be a bit of a hot take.
I actually completely agree with that. I think now that we're at the merge, Joey's uh position is greatly improved because he's somebody that, like you said, was being potentially targeted by that counter alliance on OG Guggenheim. And now that we're at the merge, like you want to take out probably the bigger threats in like a Chris or DeLuca, who were the other part of that perceived trio, because Katie was part of the Triple K alliance, etc. So they wanted to keep Katie on their side, but Joey was sort of like a good consensus target. But now that they're at the merge, Joey hasn't done anything to really upset anyone. He's decent strategically and socially, like you said, Will. So I could see him making a run here potentially, or getting taken out as sort of like a consensus vote somewhere along the way. What do you think, Steven?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if maybe I don't know if I could see him winning outright. Um, just because he has had the target on him in the past. And I think once you get targeted for whatever reason, it's really hard to get people to forget that.
Mm-hmm.
Because they'll go back to that. They'll think, oh, well, why did we keep Joey this long when we should have voted him out at this point? I guess now is a good time to vote him out because XYZ, right? So I would like to see more from him, and I would love to see him, just make a run for it and get to the end. I I I think that he's in a more of a negative spot right now. He's aligned with people that are bigger personalities that are a little bit louder, and you would think that is a good thing, um, because it's like a meat shield type strategy. You can hide behind them, but at the same time, you if you can look past that shield and see who's hiding, then you need to take them out. Um, and then that just weakens the people that are louder, right? So I think if you take out Joey now, you weaken DeLuca, you weaken Chris, you weaken Cody, um, which is what a lot of people want to do. If they can't vote out DeLuca, if they can't vote out Chris because they're scared of an idol, then why not just target Joey, who you are pretty positive doesn't have an idol, and then you also weaken those other big players. So I hold hope for him that he'll do well, but I'm nervous for him at the same time. I think he needs to watch out and use the information that he has with him correctly and try to position himself a little bit better. That's my take on Joey at the moment.
Yeah, I guess we'll see who's right there. Whoever's correct gets
Place
bragging
your bet.
rights.
Place your bet. Mhm.
Place your bets, yeah. Okay, next up we have Justin, our resident challenge beast here,
Ooh.
who has an interesting pre-merge game. Definitely is closest to Floyd, it seems like at this point, which I think is good for Justin because Floyd has a good social game and so could maybe bring Justin in as those early merge alliances are being formed. So Will, what is your take on Justin?
Yeah, Justin is someone who I've really fallen in love with. Like as the game has gone on, he's such a fun character. By far the most disadvantaged by time zones, but his game is still really excellent. Like at marooning, people were like, Justin wasn't there. It was like 3 a.m. for him, so he was at a big disadvantage because like literally everyone else except for like Mars was online. So people were already like, oh, I don't know Justin as well. He could be an easy boot. But, he won the first immunity. He was able to integrate himself and eventually put himself in a really good spot. So I guess if we look at like the votes that he's been a part of, let me pull up the voting chart real quick. Um, yeah, so like the first one, the Conrad vote, like he was a part of that blind side. He was left out of the Jesse vote, but he was able to recover pretty well. And I think he was kind of the brains behind that really interesting move on Brian. Like they sniped him with an idol in the pocket. And yeah, like after he swapped on the new Guggenheim tribe, he was in a good spot. Like everyone seemed to really like Justin. Both the OG Louvres and the OG Guggenheims were sort of bonding with him, and he was kind of in a power position. Um, the way he thinks about strategy is really smart to me. Like in his confessionals, he has like a very analytical mind, which is interesting. Like he talked about stock options and like strategy for these games, and that's very cool to see. Um, but at the same time, he's comes across as like people really like Justin. Like he has a strong social game. He doesn't ever come across as condescending or like hard to talk to. So I really think he's kind of the full package. Um, and the only downside I'm seeing right now is that I think he's going to have trouble managing his threat level, just because he's really dominated a lot of the challenges so far, and he sort of escaped culpability of the Brian vote. But I think as time goes on, people are going to see how smart Justin is and how much of a threat he is. So I guess like for me, my prediction is that he's able to like pull off some really good moves and get to like final 8, final 7, but by then he'll become a target. And it's a question of will he be able to win comps and, pull votes to scrape by, or will he get cut just before the end, like the last Justin we had?
We've had a pretty big range of Justins on PatORG, and all three of them have been challenge beasts,
Mm-hmm.
which is very funny. It's very, I guess it's just fitting for the name. If you're a Justin, you're going to be a challenge beast.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's a rule.
it's a rule at this point. If you're not, then get out. Um, it's interesting though. You think about the three Justins, and their games are all kind of different. One makes the finale, one is cut just short, and we're still kind of seeing one develop. And the social games of the first two lacked, I think, a little bit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Season 21, Justin was always the target, but never got any votes to get him out because people were too busy cannibalizing each other. And then season 22, Justin was in a decent position, and then just come merge, everything got turned on its head, and kind of went scorched earth policy with his gameplay, and just won challenges, had an idol that scared a lot of people, and he stayed in the game much longer than anybody wanted. And so this Justin is, not only does he have, good challenge capabilities, but like you said, Will, he's very, very strategic. He's very analytical. It always feels like he's thinking a couple steps ahead of where he's at. And even though he got blindsided with the Jesse vote, Um, it shows his prowess at his social game that people like Tom and Andy immediately went to him to apologize and to kind of reconcile after the fact, because they wanted to keep working with him. So I'm really, really excited to see where he goes. I would love to see him and Gabriel team up and then maybe duke it out in the finale. That would be a really, really fun final tribal
Yes, that would
council.
be fun.
I think.
The
Uh,
non-Americans battle it out.
the non-Americans, yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, we'll just have to see. I wonder if all of the challenges will be in his favor, or maybe he'll slip up somewhere or make a mistake. It's very easy to, especially when you're looking at a screen all day. If you're
Hmm.
playing these games and your eyes can kind of get fatigued and you can misread something easily. So um, he'll need to manage his threat level, like you said. But I ultimately I think he's doing very, very well, and he could easily get pretty far in this game. Final Tribal Council, I don't know. I hope so. Um, but I think he'll definitely at least be late merge boot, if anything.
Okay, next up we have the first of our K cubed here in Katie. Katie is someone I think where she's pretty minimalist when it comes to her confessionals, but she
Yeah.
did sort of indicate, who she feels best about in those pre-merge alliances that she was a part of. She seems to be pretty good at challenges. She's doing well enough socially, I think. Um, and I know, Will, you have her as a potential winner, a contender here as well. So, what do you think Katie's path to get to the end win would be?
Yeah, Katie's interesting to me because she reminds me of Clara in a lot of ways. It's her confessionals, like neither of them were super in-depth confessionalists, but they were both very consistent, like always updating us each round. Both of them are very funny, like just like looking at camp chats, they're always like, cracking jokes, lightening the mood, and they're both very solid physical competitors. Katie, did really good on the word challenge. Claire was also very solid in challenges, even though she didn't win until the very end. Um, and Katie's position, I really like it. Like she was in the middle on OG Guggenheim, but she never had to choose a side. So she never had to sever bonds and lie to people. So coming into merge, she's very clean. Like no one's really looking at her. No one really has a huge target on her. She has kind of like a non-committal way of talking about strategy, but I think that's fine because she's surrounded herself with people who will have opinions. So she can sort of pull the strings from behind the scenes instead of like outright saying who she wants to vote. Um, the reason I've had her as a contender for a while is because Guggenheim's obviously in a really good spot, but I think we'll start to see some of the big names like DeLuca, Chris, Cody, maybe Gabriel even. I like Chase already left, but I think we'll start to see those people sort of fall. And Katie, who is very mid-level, I'd say, in that hierarchy, like she's playing well, she's smart, but she's not really out there, is just gonna keep slipping by. And just the way she presents her game is very sensible. She seems like a really smart player, and I think she has a ton of potential. Um, and I'm really curious to see like, is she going to? Are people going to clock her? Are people going to know like that she's emerging as a threat, or is she going to just keep like staying under that radar until the end? But I think she's going to do well. I think she's going deep.
I can totally see that, and I agree. I think her biggest struggle right now is going to be how she handles these first couple votes. She cannot show her hand in where she is with her alliances. She cannot show
Mm-hmm.
she's playing both sides. She still needs to play the middle, but she has to do it in a way where she doesn't upset anybody right now. And you brought it up, targeting maybe bigger personalities or bigger threats. She'll definitely capitalize on that, and she should. Um, but I worry that she's going to pull the trigger too soon, and then she's going to make enemies much sooner than she needs to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if she's kind of this is going to be bad to say, but she's kind of like me at the moment in 21, where caught between two alliances and has to pick. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and she hasn't had to pick yet.
Yeah.
So the parallels to season 21 are really, really weird, and I don't like it. There's too many of them right now. But she needs to be very smart about what information she gathers and what information she shares. That was something that I got locked into only because Christina and EJ knew I had the idol. Had I not
Mm-hmm.
had the idol, I think I would have been a little bit, or had they not known, I think I would have been more apt to working with you and Shay and Jake because there's more numbers there.
Yeah.
Um, so she's playing like me right now. She's got to be very, very careful because if she starts burning bridges now, it's not going to look pretty either when she gets voted out or if she makes it to final tribal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are all really good points. I had kind of been slotting in her. I was comparing in my mind her more to like a Jess from my season 22.
Ooh, interesting.
But I really do like the Clara comparison, Will, especially because Clara's kind of put in an interesting spot post merge where she had to play double agent. And I
Mm-hmm.
could see Katie trying to do something like that here if she doesn't want to burn those bridges. And that was like a secret that Clara was able to hold on to it for a long time. Like several people went to the jury without realizing that she was part of the Jeff Blind side. So I could absolutely see that arc for her. It's going to be interesting to see if that's how she chooses to play it. She seems kind of like a straight shooter to me. Like she likes things to be very like direct and easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if like that type of plan will overcomplicate things for her and she won't like it as much. But she also has the fun like auction item that she could potentially use at some point.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what Katie does. I do hope we get a little more from her in confessionals because I would love to
Yeah.
know more of where her head's at with things. But she's been really interesting so far and definitely like a very important player, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, next up we have Cody. Steven, what are your thoughts about Cody here so far and the potential he has to do some damage at the merge?
Cody is an interesting player. Um, I think because at the start of the game, he and Chris both kind of overextended themselves a little bit. And their Triple K alliance got leaked at one point, and he's tied to some of the wrong people. Um, as much as I love DeLuca, and I think that him being closely attached to DeLuca and Chris and Joey, given how we've talked about most of them already, um, I think that puts another target on him. He was very, very smart. We talked about it already, but he was very smart with how he handled um, the Hunter vote. So I hope that he can stay reserved like that here at the merge. But something tells me that he's been waiting to do something, play a little bit more aggressively. And so I wonder if he's going to um, start some mess kind of early, a little bit earlier than he should for his own game. So he's one to watch. He's definitely one to watch. I don't think he'll make it to the finale. I think he might fizzle out. Um, but definitely keep your eye on him for sure.
Yeah, I do not love Cody's spot. I actually think he's gonna be out in the next couple of rounds. For me, it's because he's been very strategic, and he's done it in like alliance chats with like 3, 4, 5 people. And I think people are gonna realize that he's always strategizing, he's always spinning his wheels. And unlike someone like, I don't know, like Justin, say, he has had a target on his back for a while. Like some people have thought, Cody's a little bit shady. We might have to, get rid of him sooner or later. So I think people are already suspicious of him. And I think he's a very likely early merge boot when Guggenheim cannibalizes itself. I do think his strategy is solid. Like, I think he's very good at explaining himself and explaining and choosing the right people to target. But I also feel like he's a little bit too out in front at the moment. And unlike DeLuca, he hasn't been able to make as many bonds that will keep keep him safe moving forward. So I think he's probably going to go soon. But if he doesn't, I'll have to reevaluate. So I'm very interested in to see how he does.
I feel similarly about Cody. I do worry for him because I do think, like you said, well, he's a little more visible than some of the other players, and I don't think he has as much information as some of the other players.
Yeah.
So I think that could end up hurting him, which is like you said, the way he's viewing the information and digesting it and using what he has so far, it makes sense. Like he's looking at things logically. I just don't think he has enough information to be making the choices that are going to be best for his game here or connecting with the right people, like you guys implied. So I am kind of worried about Cody here. I don't think he's going to go right away because, they do have a majority. But once they start turning on each other, the OG Guggenheims, that is, I think he could be going as one of the first people in part of that, like, switch up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next up, we have the infamous Chris. Chris has had such an interesting pre-merge, I think. And he still has this very tight connection with DeLuca here. Will, what are your thoughts about Chris?
Yeah, he was not in a good spot at any point during the pre-merge. I think OG Guggenheim, there's a good chance he goes home if they go to Tribal. And also in the Guggenheim 2.0, besides Nick, everyone was kind of like, Chris is a little bit shady. I don't know if I want to work with him. So I definitely think like the social game, it's good for some people like Cody and DeLuca, but for others like have been very thrown off by him, like Danny or Talia. I think those two have mentioned that they don't really trust Chris. So I think the most likely scenario is that Chris is also an earlier merge boot. I could see him going at 13 or 12. I think both are very possible. But I don't know. I like the way he thinks. I think he's a smart guy, and I've actually really loved spectating him just because he's super complex. Like you can tell, he's like had a really interesting life. You hear a lot of positive things about him. You hear a lot of negative things about him, and that's like my favorite kind of person to watch. Someone who's divisive. And I think he's a really good strategic player. He's been able to find the idol. He just hasn't clicked socially. So personally, I would love a Chris redemption arc. Like I would love to see him sort of redeem himself and make a deep run. But as of right now, I think it's more likely than not that he's out pretty early.
Yeah, I agree. I think he hit the ground running a little too hard and maybe stumbled at the start. Because we see him sell his idol, we see him, get the idol command, and then he wanted to share it. He really wanted to share it with like everyone in his alliance without outright sharing it. Sells it to DeLuca, and immediately when they swapped, information is given to him to not trust Nick, and Nick is given information to not trust Chris. So I feel like there's already a feud growing there. They haven't talked to each other, but they both hate each other. So and it's all because of word of mouth from other people. And so I think this first vote is going to be very telling, and I have a feeling it's going to be Nick versus Chris, and I could easily see Chris going instead of Nick's. Nick's somehow going to skate by again. I don't know how, but I could see a world where Chris goes home. So unfortunate that would happen. He is very entertaining. He's just not making all the right decisions at the right times. So that's kind of where I'm at with him.
Yeah, in terms of newbie strategy, I think Chris has been the most like fascinating person to watch so far. Because he has good instincts. Like he figured out the idol hunt so quickly, like he finished it. But then like his first instinct was to tell Cody about it. And then his second instinct
Yeah,
was to
I
sell it to DeLuca.
know.
It's just like he's right there, and then he just like goes off the rails. So he's so interesting to watch because of things like that. So since like this has been sort of like his arc so far, I would love for him to stay in longer. But like you guys said, he is visible. He has been thrown out as a target in the past, so I think it would be pretty easy for his name to get picked up again here. But I really hope it doesn't happen because he's so fun to watch. So yeah,
Mhm.
hopefully Chris is around for a little longer. Um, and then we have sort of his rival here in Nick, who has also had an interesting pre-merge. Kind of a volatile player, but definitely interesting. So, Will, thoughts on Nick?
I love Nick. I'm like, the moment like we were 5 minutes into the game and he formed like 3 alliances, I was like, Nick is gonna be very fun, and he has delivered. He is quite the character. Like, he doesn't give many confessionals, but when he does, it's like the most random stuff. Like, he'll be talking about like something that makes no sense, and he's just like, he's all over the place, and I think I relate to that on a personal level. So maybe that's why I like him so much. Um, he's like, his strategy is baffling. Like, wanting to throw a challenge on a tribe that you would get voted out of is probably like one of
Oh
my
my
biggest
gosh, yeah.
WTFs of like any org I've ever seen. I was like, dude, what are you doing? But he's just funny to watch just because he's like, he's kind of delusional. I don't know if that might be a little harsh, but like, his reads are very wrong, and it's entertaining with how like forcefully he commits to them. um and the thing is, I think like it's weird because people say like, I do not think his social game is great. Like, it seems like a lot of people, both on OG Louvre and OG Guggenheim, are like, Nick's an easy vote, let's just get rid of him. um but it's because he's very fun in confessionals, so I'm just like, maybe that doesn't translate as well to DMs. But still, he survived. He's had some clutch immunity wins. He's been able to profit off of the other lose targeting each other instead of going for the easy vote. And where I think he's at now, I actually think he's the most likely merge boot, just because the first merge boot a lot of the time is just a consensus among people, and I think the Louvres would be willing to give Nick up, and the Guggenheims are like, let's just target him. None of us have a relationship with him. But if like a big move happens here at 13 and he's able to squeak by, I think he makes it very far, because at that point, why take him out when there are clearly bigger threats?
100% easy, easy um, number if you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's so weird how he's able to skate by multiple times when put up against Talia. Like, they're both a pair and they both get put up at the same time, kind of as a duo that we need to take out. But it's weird because everyone says they're a duo, but they're not a very powerful one. So
Yeah.
why bother? And
Mm-hmm.
I think people have noticed that, and that's why they targeted Brian or they targeted Jesse. Um, and so he's very fascinating. Taking credit for the Conrad vote out, even though it was more everyone else doing it to save him. Uh, all the alliance chats. He's very, very aggressive with people,
Yeah.
and it's so weird. And I was gonna say something, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know it had something to do with just how kind of volatile a player he is. He doesn't tend to think before he speaks. He's very reactionary, and I have he hasn't made enough alliances um socially with people. Oh, there, I found it. I find it very interesting that he hasn't done this once, but at least 2 or 3 times he has suggested throwing the challenge to get someone out. It's giving Colton from One World, where Colton he takes his tribe to tribal council when they were safe to vote out like someone that he doesn't like. That's kind of the energy I'm getting here, because why would you ever throw a challenge, and why are your reads that bad that you think you'll be safe if you lose a challenge, especially if people find out that you threw the challenge? There's no way you're staying safe. So Nick is either he's gonna fizzle out in a blaze of glory. I think it's going to be a very dramatic tribal council when he goes out, not if, because I think he's going to go out at some point. But it'll be a fun blaze to watch for sure.
Agreed.
I have to agree with Will that I think Nick is probably at this point the most likely merge boot, just because he doesn't have anyone protecting him. Like his closest ally is Talia, and she was willing to like leave him out of a vote. So I don't know. I worry about him. He did like start this alliance with the OG Louvs, but that alliance chat is like basically dead, and they're clearly not all working together as like the final five here. So I don't know. I would love for him to try to like rally them together, and stay Louvre strong for a little while, but I just don't think the social game's there, like you guys have said. So yeah. I don't know if it'll necessarily be a dramatic vote out, like Steven said. I think he'll probably have some choice words if he gets voted out, but I think it could unfortunately end up a consensus if that's the way people decide to go with the merge here. Okay.
I'm glad he gets to stay in Pondy though. Like,
Yeah.
I'm very happy he made Bridge. I feel like he's gonna be very fun.
I will love that. That would be like an iconic mayor of Ponty there. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, next up we have the other like seemingly like bottom feeder, like who has just continually survived tribal after tribal here in Talia. She is so much fun. She slayed this current challenge, it looks like.
I know.
And yeah, Talia's still here. Talia, like, I don't know. I don't even know where to start with Talia. What do you think, Will?
I mean, okay, my main concern is that she's a furry, but we don't have to talk about that here.
Please, Will.
Let's talk about her game.
No, oh my God.
Well, I will be asking her about that after the season ends. But anyways, I think Talia I underrated her at the beginning. I thought like she was clearly on the outside. Her reads were like all off, and I was like, "What is this girl doing?" But she's managed to survive, and she is the last Louvre to vote correctly every time, which is crazy. But I actually give her more credit than Nick, honestly, at least based on her confessionals. I give her a lot of credit with surviving these votes. Primarily the Brian one. I think she played a big part in the Brian vote, and leaving Nick out was very smart. I think she knows how to play the bottom. She knows how to work people, sort of find her way in and get them to she offers herself up as a number and is able to sort of hop from side to side, just purely by virtue of being on the bottom. The originator of that strategy, I would say, is Vesepia from Marquesas. She was always on the bottom of her alliances, but she could go from alliance to alliance pretty easily. So I think here, assuming Nick goes as merge boot, I think she is a dark horse. It seems like people like her, like on Guggenheim 2.0, like a lot of people were like, Talia seems chill. And she's really recovered from that bad start, and I could see her making a deep run. Winning, I'm not sure about. I don't know if people view her as like a strong gamer just because she's kind of goofy, but I think she's gonna go far. I have faith in her, and I love Talia. She's so funny. I think she's gonna win like funniest and craziest and whatever, but she's just a blast, and I'm really glad she's managed to stick around this long. It's made the season a lot better.
Oh yeah, she's a great character for sure, and I could see her winning fan favorite. If anything, just based on her commentary throughout the game.
She's so funny.
Yeah, she just has some wild opinions to share sometimes. I think she is in a very, very good spot here at the merge. She managed the swap very, very well. She got lucky. I think that they won both times while they were swapped. But she was able to connect with Danny to an extent. More with DeLuca, which I think is the important person. I think if you can get in with DeLuca, you can get in anywhere. And I don't say that because DeLuca is easy to make an alliance with, but I think it's because of the power that DeLuca has. If DeLuca likes you, then she will spread that information far and wide. So she's been able to recover from being on the bottom. That Brian blindside was pivotal, and in her mind, she came up with that plan, and I think that's important for her. I think that'll give her an extra boost and fuel in
Hmm.
wanting to stay in the game and to play farther. It wasn't necessarily her original plan, if that makes sense. Like it was more of the Brian Blindside was more of a couple different people coming together with the same idea and finding out that they also had the same idea. Because it's hard to say any one person can take responsibility for that vote. But if she's able to make it to the end, she can easily spin that in a case for herself, where she was and extremely pivotal in that vote. Um, she's a lot of fun. I think socially she's doing well, and clearly from the challenge today, she's also doing well. So another one to keep your eyes out for, and hopefully she can continue to provide us with quality entertainment.
Yeah, I also love Talia. She's been so much fun to watch so far. I think the Brian vote was really interesting for her because, like, it did show like she has some strategic chops, even if it wasn't necessarily her completely leading the plan. And I think she played like her role there perfectly. She's also like you guys said, like someone who knows how to play from the bottom well, and she realized she didn't have a lot of power. So she kind of just like did what she had to do to survive, and I think she did it in a way that wasn't like off-putting to anyone. I think she's like socially good enough. And now that she's at the merge, she's gonna probably have more opportunities to make moves because I don't think people are gonna be targeting her here right away. So I think she'll have time on her side as well to get in with the right people, whether that's DeLuca or somebody else. I know she's also feeling connected to Floyd, who's another great social player and someone who could maybe take her under his wing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Talia hopefully go far. She gives great confessionals, very different from Gabriel, who's my other favorite confessionalist of the season. Like she's just so random and they're very short
Yeah.
confessionals, but she tells us so much all the time. So I
Hmm.
feel like I have a good outlook on what her game is and what her mindset is. So love that about her. Okay, and to wrap things up, number 13 here, we have Tom, who just had two tribe mates voted out post swap. He's had to like work his butt off socially there to survive. He did a really great job of that. He's definitely one of the more visible players, I would say here. So I am a
Hmm.
little bit worried about his longevity, but Will, what do you think Tom needs to do here to go a little farther?
At this point, I think he just needs to keep his mouth shut in certain places. Like, I'm rooting for him so hard just because he's so, you can tell he's like invested. He's a really passionate player. He seems like a really fun guy. I love his confessionals. Like, some people are like, it's a lot, but I love that they're super in depth. We always know what he's thinking. Um, and I'm just rooting for him. I think he is just really likable. He's kind of an underdog, but I would love to see him make a comeback. I think his main problem is that he just talks too much sometimes. It's like Tom, like I just saw, like literally like 2 seconds ago, Gabriel was like, Tom just said like, who would I replace Amoya with or something like
Oh
that.
my god,
And I'm like,
yeah. What are you doing?
yeah. I'm like, what would you say? Why are you saying that? I'm like, he has a great, like, people like him. Like, he's a very likable guy. I think he just needs to tone it down a little bit, like reel it in. And if he can keep that amiability and keep being likable and work with that social game and play smart and make moves while, not giving away so much information and like saying things he shouldn't, that's where his sweet spot will be. But right now, I think he's who people are going to take out if they want to take out like a threat, quote unquote. So he's in kind of a shaky spot.
Yeah, I agree. Him and I believe Floyd are the oldest members on the cast currently, and it's interesting to see how they've integrated in, especially with some of the younger people on the cast.
Yeah.
Um, and Tom just kind of seemed he's very relatable. He's very relatable, very easy to talk to. But like you said, he just doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut and wait. Um, I think he's very eager. He knows he's on the bottom, so he is trying to work any way he can to stay in a good position, which is fine, but his approach is wrong. Um, he just needs to sit back, trust the people that he's talked to, continue to strengthen those bonds, and I think he'll be okay. Um, I think if he continues down the path that he's on right now, I could see him maybe being our third juror, third or
Yeah,
fourth.
agreed.
He's not going to go out first, but I think after you get someone out like Nick and then Chris, um, I think that's where we'll see him, is in that third or fourth juror spot.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And Tom is someone I've really enjoyed tracking since preseason when it was very clear how invested he is, like you said, Will. And just the fact that he was willing to put in all that effort there to save himself, after the swap, like goes to show like he's here to play. He's done decently well so far strategically, like socially, he's done really well. It's just very obvious what he's doing. But I would love for him to sort of like let other people take the lead and present himself more as like, let me be a number for you, because he's likable and people will want to work with him if he's just, like willing to go
Yeah.
along with them. But he does not need to be saying things like, how about you replace someone who's been in your alliance longer than I
Yeah.
have? Like, that is not
Uh-huh.
what he needs to be doing. So I just need him to stop that and just like kind of go with the flow, because I don't think he's going to be targeted right away if he does that. So I just really hope he can like tone it down a little bit, but I am concerned he might not be able to.
Hmm. For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we've gone through all 13 remaining cast members here. Do you guys want to talk about? I know we've sort of touched on like who we're feeling good about, who we're more concerned about. Do we each want to give like a winner prediction and a merge group prediction, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I said this. I think it's Nick Merge Boot.
Yeah.
I think we all like are sort of thinking that. Winner, there's a lot of possibilities for sure. And I feel like maybe it's smartest to pick a Guggenheim just because 8-5 is a big deficit, but I'm gonna hold out for Floyd here. I think if anyone can do it, Floyd can. So I'm gonna say him.
I want to agree on the Nick merge boot. I really want to, but I have a feeling that maybe they might shift the target onto someone else last minute, depending
Mm-hmm.
on how the results come for the challenge.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna go Chris. I think that people are getting stuff in the works for Chris boot. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to be different. I want to be edgy. I want to be goofy. So
No, but I
I'll
can
go with
see
a Chris
that.
boot.
Yeah, it's definitely plausible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then for winner pick, um, I'm gonna go with my boy Gabriel. I think right now he's in the best spot,
Mm-hmm.
and I think if he continues to play the game that he is, he could easily win the whole thing.
Okay. Well, I apparently have zero original thoughts because I was also gonna say Nick for merge boot and Gabriel for winner.
You just share what we have. Yep.
But to be different, I wanna throw some love toward Danny. I want to give him some like good vibes because I do think he
Mm-hmm.
could get there. I'm just worried about the overplaying and becoming visible. But right now he's in a good spot. So if he can stay on this trajectory, I would love Danny to win.
Yes, for sure.
Awesome. Well, any other general thoughts about the season so far that you guys want to mention here? I really appreciate all the good insights we've had so far.
Um, I love this season. This is like for me, it's like hitting that sweet spot of um, nice characters, but like also some fun drama, and like a mix of like strategy and character. And I think the pre-merge hasn't been as strategy heavy, except for that Brian boot. That Brian boot was amazing. Um, but that's to be expected, and I think we're in for a really good merge, and I'm really excited.
I agree. I think after last season where we didn't have a lot of drama. There weren't any big loud characters that made the merge that would have shaken things up. And so it was a good post merge last season, but it wasn't what we were expecting. Um, but now that we have this group of people that have come together, many meeting for the first time, and all the different personalities that are very, very very stark, very polar opposites, it's going to make for a great merge. So I'm really excited. I think the twists have been really good. I hope to see
Yeah.
how they get implemented more, with who decides to play what.
Good job,
Um,
production. Let's shout out
yes,
production for that.
shout out to the
Woo!
production team.
Go us.
Um, but yeah, overall, it's turning out to be a great season.
Totally agree. I think it's going to be an exciting merge. I think it's going to be a very emotional merge depending on how these first few votes go, because we have so many people who've like been emotional in cons, talked about like the personal connections they've made. So I think like a juicy blindside will really shake things up emotionally and like get some like crazy stuff going. So I'm looking forward to that. Um
Hmm.
but thank you guys both for being here today. I really appreciate the season 21 representation. It's been really fun talking to both of you. So for Stephen and Will, I'm Sarah, and we'll see you next time. Bye.